I still remember the scent of the burnt truffle butter and the sound of the expensive silverware hitting the marble counter. That night, I was not just served a divorce, I was served a death sentence for my dignity. He looked at me, this man I had spent 6 years building up, and declared my worth less than the interest rate on his new loan. I swallowed the poison whole. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I found that serving it with surgical precision and a smile was far more satisfying. My name is Cassidy Hayes, and I am 38 years old. Today, I was named Project Head. It was not just a promotion, it was the contract. The Sterling City Revitalization Project. Massive, high impact, the kind of work Nexus Group was built for, the kind of work I was built for. I spent the afternoon walking on air, the text from my director buzzing in my pocket like a physical validation of my entire career. I came home determined to celebrate. This was an important occasion. So, I pulled out the formal china, the heavy, gold-rimmed plates Julian Vance insisted we get from his mother's estate. They were ugly, but they were important. I uncorked the expensive Cabernet he saved for clients. I spent hours on a meal that was sentimental and complex, a slow braised lamb shank, the truffle butter risotto he always claimed to love. I lit the tall, tapered candles. I even put on the dark green dress he bought me years ago, the one he said made my eyes look serious. The text I sent him at 4 p.m., the one with the screenshot of the announcement, went unread. The 5 p.m. text, headed home to make something special, also went unread. At 9 p.m., the risotto was a solid, cold mass. The candles had burned down 2 inches. Julian arrived 3 hours late. The front door opened and slammed shut with the force of his irritation. He did not call out. I heard his briefcase hit the floor and the heavy, expensive click of his shoes on the hardwood. He walked into the dining room, not looking at me, not looking at the table. His focus was entirely on the phone pressed to his ear. He was still wearing his overcoat, his jaw tight. No, the leverage is weak. He snapped into the phone. Kill it. I do not care about the optics. He ended the call and finally, looked at me. There was no recognition, no apology, just a flat, dismissive appraisal of the scene. He barely glanced at the dress, and his eyes registered the elaborate meal as an inconvenience. What is all this? He asked. His voice was not curious. It was cold, clinical. Julian, I tried to text you. I got it. I got the revitalization project. I am the new project head. He stared at me. The silence stretched, thick and waxy like the dripping candles. He loosened his tie, his gaze moving from the cold lamb to my face. Cass, he said, and the way he used my name felt like a warning. We need to talk about reevaluating priorities. He began a speech. It was not a conversation. It was a verdict. He talked about his pending partnership bonus, a number with so many zeros it sounded hypothetical. He compared it, clinically, to my salary, which he dismissed as a rounding error. He talked about my work, the work I loved, the work that was literally rebuilding parts of our city, as a noble distraction. This is the big league, Cass, he said, gesturing vaguely at himself, at his phone. This is wealth. What you do, it is nice. It is social good, but it will never put you on my financial or social level. My little career, I repeated. The words felt like ash in my mouth. He sighed, impatient, as if I was a slow employee. Your accomplishment today is trivial. Cass, it is small. It does not register next to what I am about to achieve. I need a partner who is an asset, not a project. He picked up his briefcase. He walked toward his home office. He paused at the doorway, his back to me. You were never an equal. Cass, he said, the words precise, designed to sever. You were an anchor. He went inside. The heavy oak door shut with a solid, definitive thud. I was left alone in the dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of my celebration. The food was cold. The candles flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the wall. I waited for the tears. I waited for the gut punch of grief, the hot shame of rejection. Nothing came. There was no grief. There was no devastation. Instead, a strange metallic clarity flooded my veins. It was sharp. It was absolute. It was the complete absence of emotion, replaced by a ruthless, cold focus. He had not broken me. He had just given me a very clear objective. I did not sit. I did not cry. I methodically picked up the gold-rimmed plates, scraping the expensive, ruined meal into the trash bin. I stacked the china with meticulous care. I moved to the kitchen, running the water hot, scrubbing the truffle butter from the pan. I polished the counters until the marble gleamed. I noted the finality in every action. I was not just cleaning up a ruined dinner. I was erasing him. I did not go to our bedroom. Instead, I went down the hall to the large guest suite, the one reserved for his mother or high-value clients who stayed over. It was immaculate, sterile, and cold. I took only my toothbrush, my skincare, and my work laptop. I locked the door. This was not a temporary retreat. It was the establishment of a permanent physical boundary. The master suite was his. This was mine. I did not sleep. I sat on the unfamiliar, stiffly made bed, my laptop humming in the silence. The anchor. He called me an anchor. An anchor is what stops a ship from drifting. An anchor provides stability in a storm. He used it as an insult. I would use it as a strategy. My mind, trained to analyze complex urban systems and find points of failure, went to work on our life. I opened our shared digital records, the mortgage documents, the joint savings account, nearly depleted for his last strategic investment. The brokerage accounts, all in his name but funded. I saw now, by joint funds I had never questioned. I went back 6 years, my fingers flying across the keyboard, downloading statements, tracking transfers, identifying every point of financial and emotional leverage I held. He had built an intricate infrastructure of support, and I was its unpaid CEO. I managed the house, the finances, the social calendar, his reputation, and he had just handed me my resignation. A thought struck me, so clear it was almost a sound. His rules. He loved his rules. I will decide when we communicate. He had texted me once during a minor disagreement. It was meant to control me, to put me in my place. I realized, sitting in that cold guest room, that his rule was a gift. It was a weapon I could turn on him perfectly. My compliance would become my sabotage. I would honor his need for space. I would honor it until it suffocated him. At 6:15, my alarm went off. I showered, dressed in my best suit for Nexus Group, and left the guest room. At 6:30 a.m., Julian's intricate morning routine was supposed to begin. It did not. The high-end espresso machine remained cold. The specific non-dairy milk he required was not frothed. His pre-selected ironed shirt, always a crisp white or pale blue, was not laid out on his valet. His scheduled town car, the one I confirmed every single night, was not waiting. I heard him stir. I heard his heavy footsteps from the master bedroom. I was in the kitchen, making a single cup of black coffee for myself. When he emerged, he was wrapped in his silk robe, his hair a mess, his face puffy with sleep and confusion. He looked at the silent kitchen, then at me. My coffee is not ready. It was a statement of fact, an accusation. Where is my breakfast? I looked up from my phone, sipping my coffee, and gave him the polite, neutral smile I reserved for difficult clients. Good morning, Julian. I am respecting your need for space. You made it clear last night that you are entirely self-sufficient, and I would not want to interfere with your priorities. His face went through a rapid series of emotions: confusion, then irritation, then a flash of genuine panic when he realized his transportation was not confirmed. Cass, I have the partnership meeting. I do not have time for this. I am sure you will handle it, I said, rinsing my cup and placing it in the dishwasher. You are on a different level, after all. I left him standing in the kitchen, staring at the cold espresso machine. On my way to the office, I did not use my personal phone. I stopped at a convenience store and bought a disposable burner phone, paying in cash. Operational security. That is what my new revitalization project demanded, and it is what my new life demanded. During my lunch break, I found a quiet, concrete park downtown. I dialed the number I had memorized from a legal journal. Rhonda Sterling's office. My name is Cassidy Hayes. I need to speak with Ms. Sterling regarding a high-asset divorce. My husband is Julian Vance. Rhonda Sterling was renowned in Sterling City. She specialized in cases just like this: high-asset spouses, complex compensation, and spousal support calculations during rapid career advancement. She took the call. I was brief, clinical. I laid out the facts: his pending partnership, his verbal declaration last night, his dismissal of my career. I told her about the loans I had personally co-signed for his graduate degree, the inheritance I had used to float us during his first 2 years at the firm. Rhonda's voice was as sharp and clear as mine. Ms. Hayes, Cassidy. His words last night were a gift. His pending partnership, if it was negotiated or earned during the marriage, is highly susceptible to division under state marital property laws. The fact that you subsidized his advancement, managed his lifestyle, and incurred debt for his benefit only strengthens our claim. He did not achieve this new level despite you. He achieved it because of you. The validation was cold, legal, and perfect. He will fight, I said. Let him, Rhonda replied. His arrogance is his liability. We will let him build his case while we build ours. After work, I did not go home. I drove to a small credit union across town, one that had no affiliation with any of our joint accounts. I used my Nexus Group paycheck, my trivial salary, to open a separate, high-security checking account. I set up a direct deposit. It was a small, untraceable portion of my next check. It was seed money. It was my first investment in my own future. Julian's life ran on an invisible set of tracks I had laid. In the first week of my silence, the train began to derail. The small rituals were the first to go. His bi-weekly dry cleaning, which I always scheduled for pickup on Tuesday mornings, was not picked up. He came home late on Tuesday, looked in his closet, and I heard a frustrated sigh. The specialized, high-potency vitamin supplements I ordered monthly from a specific compound pharmacy did not arrive. When his current bottle ran out, he seemed genuinely confused, as if they were supposed to materialize by magic. I was in the guest suite, deep in my project schematics, when he knocked on the door. It was a sharp, impatient rap. I did not answer. Cass. He called through the heavy wood. Did the supplement order come in? I remained silent, listening to the sound of my own breathing. I heard him huff, then walk away. He believed I was performing a brief emotional protest. He assumed that after a few days of this inconvenience, his infrastructure would reappear, and I would be back, apologizing for my lapse in duty. He was wrong. On Friday, I logged into the joint household management account. I canceled the gardener. I canceled the specialized bi-weekly cleaning service that polished the marble and conditioned the oak. I canceled the pool maintenance. I did it all with a series of clean, satisfying clicks. I was pruning liabilities. At Nexus Group, my focus became atomic. All the energy I had previously allocated to managing Julian, the worry, the planning, the emotional accommodation was now channeled directly into the Sterling City Revitalization Project. My director, Maya, a woman who missed nothing, stopped me by my desk. "You are on fire, Cassidy," she said, tapping the preliminary budget report I had submitted 2 days early. "Whatever you are doing, keep doing it. This is exactly the kind of leadership this project needs." Praise from Maya was rare. It felt solid, earned. It was a currency Julian did not understand. His texts began on day 4. They were not emotional, they were logistical. Demands disguised as questions. "Where is the key fob for the yacht club locker?" I saw the notification on my phone's locked screen. I held my thumb over it, felt the small vibration as the message was deleted. Unread. The quarterly tax prepayment is due. Have you scheduled it? Delete. I cannot find the gift registry for the Henderson wedding. Delete. He was discovering, one by one, the gaps in his own high-level life. The most significant gap, however, was digital. For years, I had meticulously maintained a detailed client database and calendar for him. It was not just his professional schedule, it was his social one. I tracked his clients' spouses' names, their children's birthdays, their preferred whiskeys, the last time he had sent them a gift. It was the soft-touch, high-impact data that made him seem thoughtful and brilliant. The shared access to that database was through an account I controlled. I did not delete the file. I simply changed the password, locking him out of his own curated reputation. He would have to reconstruct it all, manually, from memory. I imagined him staring at a blank spreadsheet, the names and dates just beyond his recall, and I felt nothing but a cold, quiet satisfaction. My own energy, no longer drained by his needs, needed an outlet. I dug my old high-endurance bicycle out of the garage. I started intense urban cycling training after work. I rode through the city, past the very neighborhoods I was planning to revitalize. I pushed myself up the steepest hills, my lungs burning, the sweat stinging my eyes. The physical exertion was aggressive, a form of self-possession. I was reclaiming my own body, my own strength, with every rotation of the pedals. I bought a simple, cloth-bound physical journal and a good pen. I took them to a small, private mail and storage facility I had rented under my new, separate bank account. I sat in the sterile room, and I began to write. I documented the date and time of his texts. I documented his knock on my locked door. I documented his increasingly erratic behavior, the sound of a glass breaking in the kitchen, the frustrated, muffled shout I heard from his office. I was building a timeline. It was not an emotional diary. It was a meticulous log of his descent, a record of his attempts to breach the boundaries he had set. This journal, stored securely outside the house, was my insurance policy. I had not spoken to my older sister, Audrey, in nearly 6 months. Julian found her abrasive and judgmental. In truth, Audrey was simply analytical, and she was the only person in my life who had looked at Julian Vance and not been impressed. He, in turn, worked subtly to isolate me from her. I called her on a Saturday morning from my burner phone, standing in the cold, fluorescent light of my rented storage unit. Cassidy? Her voice was sharp with surprise, then immediate concern. My God, I was about to call the police. I have not heard from you in months. I am okay, Aud, I said, the words catching in my throat. I am leaving him. There was a pause, followed by a long, slow exhale. Thank God, she said, the relief palpable. I always found that man controlling. Cass. He is a spreadsheet where a heart should be. I never liked the way he watched you. What do you need? Just tell me. Her immediate, unconditional support, cutting through the months of silence Julian had engineered, felt like a structural reinforcement for my soul. That same energy, the feeling of reclaiming my own map, translated at work. My focus at Nexus Group was total. The revitalization project required a critical early-phase deliverable, a community impact and feasibility study that was notoriously complex and often torpedoed by city politics. I poured my nights into it. The energy I used to waste analyzing Julian's moods now dedicated to building something real. I presented the study to the City Council and the Nexus Board on Thursday. It was airtight, predictive, and answered questions before they were even asked. Maya, my director, caught me in the hallway afterward, her expression uncharacteristically warm. That was not just a presentation, Cassidy, she said. That was a new standard. They approved the next phase funding, unanimously. You are not just project head anymore. You are running this part of the city. This win was not trivial. It elevated my status within the firm from reliable to indispensable. I channeled my physical energy into my cycling. I joined an early morning training group that tackled the steepest grades in Sterling City. The trainer, Damon, was a quiet, intense man, a former military planner who treated urban cycling like a tactical operation. He was not aware of my situation. He only knew my performance on the bike. One morning, after I finished a grueling multi-stage climb without breaking formation, he rode up beside me. "Hayes," he said, nodding, "you have impressive strategic execution. You do not waste energy panicking on the ascent. You do not fight the hill. You just execute the plan." His praise, based purely on my focus and discipline, felt more validating than a decade of Julian's hollow compliments. It was a platonic, strategic connection, a reminder that my analytical mind was an asset, not an anchor. I met with Rhonda Sterling again, this time in her high-rise office overlooking the financial district. I had used my new, secure account to pay her initial consultation fee. "We are in a strong position," Rhonda said, tapping the loan agreements I had co-signed for Julian's MBA. "But strong is not what we want. We want undeniable. Julian's partnership announcement is imminent, correct? Within the next month, I believe?" I said. "Good." She leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "This is a high-risk, high-reward strategy. Cassidy, we wait. We do not serve him now, while he is expecting a fight. We serve him the moment his partnership is announced, or just before, when he is at his most visible and his firm is at its most sensitive to disruption. We want maximum professional impact. We want them to see him as a liability, not a partner." It was a brutal strategy. It was perfect. As his carefully managed life continued to crumble, Julian's texts began to change. The logistical demands, which I had continued to delete unread, shifted in tone. "I miss you. This is ridiculous. Cass, can we talk? I bought that Pinot you like. It is in the fridge." They were weak attempts at reconciliation, rooted not in remorse, but in his own inconvenience. I maintained absolute silence. I was, after all, adhering strictly to his original rule. I will decide when we communicate. He had set the boundary. I was simply enforcing it. The universe provides strange gifts. My Nexus project required deep background checks on city vendors and potential financial partners. It was during a routine audit of a subcontractor's financials that a familiar name flashed across my screen in a related party transaction. Julian. He had made a small, legally ambiguous financial maneuver, routing a consulting fee through a newly formed LLC that looked suspiciously like a shell company. It was sloppy. He was stressed, and he had gotten sloppy. It was the kind of minor financial discrepancy that might slide by unnoticed. Or, if it came to light during a compliance review, it could jeopardize his entire partnership. I stared at the file reference number on my screen. I did not download the file. I did not report it. I simply wrote the reference number down in my physical journal and stored it in my secure locker. I would sit on this information. It was not my primary weapon. It was the ultimate deterrent. I needed financial independence for the legal fight. Rhonda's full retainer was substantial, and I refused to use my salary. I went into the master bedroom for the first time in weeks. It smelled stale, like his anxiety and expensive cologne. I opened the velvet-lined drawers of the highboy. I took the heavy diamond earrings he had bought me after his first major bonus. I took the specialized abstract art piece he'd insisted was a good investment. I took the rare antique watch I never wore. I sold them all to a discreet, high-end reseller. The money, wired to my secure account, was enough to fund Rhonda's retainer for a full year. I was using the very symbols of his wealth, his level, to finance his dismantling. Julian's escalation was predictable, but his choice of venue was foolish. He came to Nexus Group. He did not have an appointment. I was deep in a logistics meeting for the revitalization project when my assistant, Maya, buzzed my desk phone. Her voice was low, professional, impeccably discreet. "Cassidy, Julian Vance is in the lobby. He says he needs to see you urgently regarding a personal matter. He was trying to pull rank. He was trying to use the implied authority of husband in my professional space, attempting to reduce me, in front of my team, to a wife who could be summoned. He was testing my new boundaries. I buzzed back, my voice equally calm, equally cold. Maya, please inform Mr. Vance that I am in a critical, time-sensitive meeting and my schedule is blocked for the remainder of the day. You are authorized to handle any logistical inquiries he may have. I had demoted him. He was not my husband. He was a logistical inquiry. He was a scheduling conflict. Later that afternoon, Maya stopped by my office, closing the door quietly. She was young, sharp, and, I realized, deeply suspicious of Julian. He did not take that well, she said. He tried to insist. He said you were not yourself and that he was worried. He tried to imply I was getting in the way. You did exactly the right thing, Maya. Thank you. She hesitated, then pushed a printed sheet across my desk. It was a blank log sheet with columns for date, time, and nature of contact. I think, she said, her gaze steady, that we should start documenting these interruptions, just for our records, in case he tries to interfere with the project timeline. It seems like professional interference. She was providing me with invaluable documented evidence, a log of his harassment, without me even having to ask. I relayed the workplace incident to Rhonda Sterling during our next clandestine meeting. Her eyes lit up with a cold, tactical fire. Excellent, she said. He is documenting his own instability. Now, we prepare your exit. When we file, he will try to freeze every asset, every card, every account with your name on it. He will try to strand you. We will not let him. That afternoon, Rhonda's firm established a limited liability company, an LLC, in a neutral name. It was a layer of corporate anonymity, a financial shield. This LLC will rent your new apartment, Rhonda explained. This LLC will open your new utility accounts. To him, when the time comes, you will simply vanish from the grid. The LLC was my armor. Now I needed the sword. That night, I waited. Julian had gone to a late client dinner, a fact I confirmed through the town car reservation that was still, foolishly, linked to my email. I went to his locked home office. He thought the heavy brass lock was security. He forgot that I was the one who had set up the entire smart home security system. I knew the master override codes. I entered his office. The air was stale, smelling of his anxiety and expensive, untouched cigars. I went straight to the filing cabinet. I found the folder, marked Archive Personal. Inside was the proof. The original loan agreements from my graduate school, which I had used to pay the rent on our first apartment for 2 years while he built his portfolio. The bank statements showing the transfer from my savings account to cover his initial investment losses. The old tax documents that proved I had incurred the financial debt for his benefit. I did not take them. I used my burner phone and photographed every single page. I uploaded them to the secure server Rhonda had established for our case. I replaced the folder, relocked the office, and returned to the guest suite. The timing, Rhonda said, was everything. 2 days later, the universe provided the countdown clock. An anonymous tip reached me. It was not a text or an email. It was a note, passed to me discreetly at a Nexus Group press event by a junior analyst who, I vaguely recalled, used to work at Julian's firm. The note was simple. Julian is panicking. He is worried about his compliance audit. His stress is a liability for the partnership vote. His firm valued control and stability above all else. Julian's visible desperation, his attempts to contact me, his visit to my office. It was not the behavior of a stable, high-level partner. His panic was my timeline. His attempts to reach me became pathetic. He stopped texting demands and started leaving peace offerings. He began bringing food home expensive, gourmet takeout, Wagyu beef, truffle pasta, complex seafood dishes from restaurants he had once told me I could not appreciate. He would place the elaborate paper bags awkwardly on the kitchen island, hoping, I suppose, that I would break my silence, that we would share it, and that this would all be over. I let the food sit until it was cold. Then, every night, I emptied the expensive containers into the kitchen trash, right on top, where he would be sure to see the waste. Using my new LLC, I secured a short-term lease on a minimal downtown loft. It was a clean, empty space with high ceilings and a view of the river, not the financial district. It was my contingency plan, my landing zone. I began moving small, essential items, my books, my data backups, the physical journal to my secure storage unit, ready to be transferred to the loft on a moment's notice. I planned the exact date I would vacate the house. It would be the day the papers were served. The deterioration of Julian Vance was visible, and it was deeply satisfying to observe. His high-status chaos began to crack the veneer he had spent his entire adult life constructing. His lack of sleep fueled, I assumed, by having to manage his own calendar, and the anxiety of the pending compliance audit was evident in the dark smudges beneath his eyes. He had always been meticulous about his appearance, viewing his presentation as an extension of his net worth. Now, he frequently appeared unshaven, a scruffy shadow he never would have tolerated before. His bespoke, tailored suits, which usually hung with perfect, unwrinkled precision, looked slightly rumpled, a forgotten mustard stain near the cuff. In his world, this was not just a fashion faux pas, it was a mortal sin, a public declaration of instability. The test came at the annual Sterling City Finance Gala, an event I attended independently with the Nexus Group team, celebrating our project's recent funding approval. Julian was there, of course, prowling the edge of the ballroom. I was wearing a perfectly tailored black dress, my posture excellent, my conversation focused on infrastructure and governance things he had dismissed as trivial. He spotted me across the room. I watched him smooth his lapels, his mouth forming the forced, practiced smile he used for high-net-worth clients. He moved through the crowd with determination, attempting to corner me near the bar. "Cassidy," he said, his voice dropping to a low, intimate tone designed to suggest shared history. "We need to talk. This is not helping either of us." I turned, my expression professional and detached. I made sure my director, Maya, was within earshot. "Mr. Vance," I said, pitching my voice just slightly above the ambient chatter, "I am currently discussing the Phase 2 deliverables for the city contract. I am fully engaged. Please direct any logistical inquiries to my assistant, Maya." I smoothly turned my back on him, continuing my conversation about zoning law. He was left standing alone, a glass of untouched champagne in his hand. The social chatter was instantaneous. The looks of confusion, followed by the rapid, knowing glances of the city's elite, confirmed that the narrative of our separation was now public. His professional armor was cracking in other ways too. I saw him later in the evening, interacting with waitstaff. He nervously checked his phone every 30 seconds, constantly looking over his shoulder. He snapped at a waiter who accidentally bumped his elbow. The Julian Vance who claimed to be on a higher level was incapable of maintaining his composure when his internalized support system me had been removed. His level, I realized with a detached observation, depended entirely on external validation and my constant, invisible maintenance. The most insidious blow was relayed to me by Maya the following week. "Just a heads up," she said, her voice tight. "Julian Vance has been making calls, veiled critical calls to a couple of our board members, claiming you are distracted by personal issues and that your judgment on the contract should be questioned. He was actively attempting to sabotage my success." I immediately forwarded Maya's account to Rhonda Sterling. Rhonda did not wait. She used the information to craft a preemptive legal notification, a formal letter sent to the head of compliance and the senior partner at Julian's firm. It cited the documented workplace interference and warned the firm against any professional retaliation against me, solidifying our aggressive stance. The message was clear: touch my career, and the legal fallout will be immediate and public. A few days later, a desperate, uncharacteristic email landed in my personal inbox, an address I had not checked in weeks. It was from Julian. "Cassidy," he wrote, I am begging you. Next week is the annual Founders Dinner. My mentor, Mr. Sterling, will be there. It is vital to my career. You must attend with me. It is only 2 hours. I need you to be there. We can discuss everything afterward. He did not apologize. He did not express love. He used the word vital. His worth, his future, depended on my performance as his accessory. I did not reply to Julian. I simply forwarded the email to Rhonda. My note to her was short, precise, and utterly final. His original rules apply. Rhonda handled the formal refusal, sending a carefully worded, legalistic reply that stated, in essence, that given his insistence on re-evaluating priorities, I was unable to accommodate his request for my presence. Back at the house, the physical disintegration was complete. The garden was overgrown. Dust filmed the expensive artwork. The final evidence of his complete dependency came when his maid service, the specialized cleaning crew I had initially canceled, attempted to quit. They called my burner phone, reporting to me, not to Julian, that the environment was too chaotic, too dirty, and the house was not stable. He was not only unable to manage the staff, his desperation had driven them away. I was ready to leave him a monument of his own high-status ruin. The call came from an unknown number on my burner phone. I answered, expecting Rhonda's office. Instead, I heard sobbing. Cassidy, it is Audrey. Julian's sister was distraught. Her breathing was ragged, punctuated by sharp, painful intakes of air. We just had a fight, a horrific fight. He is tearing the house apart. He called me because I was the only person he could find to yell at. He is terrified. Cass. Terrified of this partnership decision. What did he say? Audrey. My voice was calm, clinical. I was running a psychological interrogation, not offering comfort. He said it is all my fault, she choked out. He screamed that I should have gotten you under control. He said if he loses this, he is going to be ruined. He told you I needed to be controlled. He has been saying things for months. Cass, she whispered, the honesty pouring out of her in a rush of shame. He told our mother back in the spring that the marriage was functionally over. He claimed you were becoming too much of a burden and that your career was an embarrassment. He said he needed to trade up for professional optics, for his new level. The air went cold in the small room where I was sitting. I had suspected it, felt it in the calculated cruelty of his words that night, but hearing it confirmed was a physical blow. His betrayal was not stress-induced. It was a long-planned, calculated rejection of my worth, based entirely on superficial metrics. He was not a broken man. He was a cynical strategist. He told me that night. Audrey, the night I got my promotion, I said, my voice steady, sharp. He looked at the celebratory meal I cooked for him, and he told me that marrying me was an act of altruistic lowering. He said I was never an equal and that I was an anchor. I laid out the full timeline, his 3-hour delay, his cold, clinical speech, the immediate retreat to his office. Audrey was silent, processing the depth of her brother's cynicism. Oh, God, Cass, I am so sorry. I thought he was just arrogant. I did not know he was weaponized. He manipulated all of us, she said, her voice hardening with her own realization. My entire family. He relies on me to be the stable one, the keeper of his social image. She paused. I want to help you take him down. Cass, I want him to pay for what he did to you and what he tried to do to me. What do you have? I asked. She gave me a piece of critical inside information. His primary professional insecurity is his mentor, Mr. Sterling. Sterling is old school, values integrity above all else. He is the deciding vote on the partnership. Julian is terrified of him seeing anything that suggests instability or, worse, dishonesty. The information was priceless. I immediately leveraged my own professional network. Through my connections at Nexus Group, I strategically leaked my recent career success to key local journalists, the unanimous Phase 2 funding, my leadership, my stability. The press coverage was overwhelmingly positive, highlighting my success and my firm's commitment to ethical urban development. It ran in sharp, intentional contrast to the whispered rumors of Julian's volatility and the mounting chaos in his personal life. I was generating a counter-narrative, painting myself as the paradigm of stability he claimed to seek. Julian's final attempt to use emotional blackmail failed. I sent him a final professional text. "I am honoring the boundaries you set. Do not contact me again." The psychological game was over. I called Rhonda. "The partnership decision is this week. We have the internal strategy meeting on Thursday morning, 10 o'clock sharp." The moment of maximum visibility. Rhonda confirmed, her voice satisfied. "That is the date. We will ensure the process server is deployed precisely during the opening remarks. The disruption will be absolute." We finalized the service date, selecting Thursday. I was ready to leave the anchor behind. Thursday, 10 a.m. I was not there, but I could see it. Julian, polished and panicked, at the head of the conference table. The high-level corporate strategy meeting was beginning, the moment of ultimate visibility for him, the moment before the partnership vote. He would be addressing the senior partners, a dozen men and women who valued control and discretion above all else. At precisely 10:07 a.m., the process server was deployed. Rhonda had hired a formidable, professional figure, a man who looked less like a messenger and more like a federal agent. He walked into that room and presented Julian Vance with a thick stack of legal documents. The timing was surgical. The papers were served during the opening remarks, ensuring that every powerful person in the room bore witness to Julian's sudden, devastating professional instability. The documents were explicit. They did not just demand alimony, they referenced the years of financial support I provided during his crucial career ascent. They established a direct, undeniable link between my perceived low level, the altruistic anchor, and his current high status. The papers proved his ascent was subsidized, not singular. The shockwave began immediately. Meanwhile, I was executing my own move. At the house, I performed a final professional cleanup. I was thorough. I collected my last few belongings from the guest suite, my charging cables, my favorite coffee mug, a handful of framed photographs of my sister and me. I loaded them into the back of a rented utility van, the entire process taking less than an hour. I did not leave a note. I left only one thing. I had taken Julian's original dismissive text message, the one about deciding when we communicate, and had it printed on high-quality archival paper and framed in a simple, cold metal frame. I propped it up on the kitchen island, right where he would see it when he returned to his ruined high-end takeout. It was the symbolic object, the proof of his original sin. I turned off the main breaker, silencing the house entirely, and drove away. Julian attempted to call me immediately after the service. The first call went to my old, personal number. He heard the disconnected tone. The second call went to the temporary phone number I had used for months. He found it blocked. I had vanished from his grid, exactly as Rhonda planned. By noon, the rumors were sweeping through Sterling City's elite finance networks. The nature of the public service, the legal grounds citing financial dependency, and the timing it created the desired narrative of professional instability around Julian. His firm's compliance department would be in lockdown. I settled into my secured downtown loft. The space was sparse, minimal, and entirely furnished under the anonymity of the LLC. There was no clutter, no history, no Julian. I stood by the high window, looking out over the river. I felt an overwhelming sense of physical lightness, the kind of lightness that comes from shedding a massive internal weight. Rhonda was already on the attack. She sent Julian's attorney, Catherine Walsh, a well-known aggressive adversary, a comprehensive evidence package. It included the photographic copies of the old loan documents, the proof of my financial support, and Maya's meticulously dated log of Julian's workplace interference. The message was clear. Contesting this divorce will not just cost Julian money, it will be catastrophic for his career image. It will expose him as a petty, unprofessional liability. Julian's breakdown was documented for me later that night. Around midnight, the smart home security system on the main house sent me a notification of failed login attempt, followed by physical tampering at the guest suite door. He was back, panicked, attempting to break the lock on the room I had occupied. He had tried to enter the place where I had engineered his downfall. He realized too late that I had changed the smart lock code months ago, long before I even filed. He was locked out of his own life. My phone, quiet all day, finally buzzed with two discreet, non-traceable messages. The first was from Maya Absolute Professional Chaos. Mission accomplished. The second was from Audrey. He is blaming everyone but himself. Watching the downfall from his side. Stay strong. Cass. I closed the door on the past, sleeping soundly in my new, independent space. The official notification came through Rhonda's office, Julian's firm, under pressure from the legal filings and the mounting negative press subtly orchestrated by Rhonda's strategic leaks had delayed his partnership announcement. The reason cited was a chilling corporate euphemism, pending further stability review. He was no longer a rising star, he was a potential liability. The Nexus Group held a crucial ceremony later that week, a black-tie dinner celebrating our success in securing the initial funding and the widespread community support for the revitalization contract. I was the centerpiece of the evening, the one being honored. I was surprised to see him there. He had clearly forced an invitation through some low-level contact, determined to stage a public reconciliation before the official narrative could set. Julian looked haggard. His expensive suit was still rumpled, and the effort he made to appear composed only highlighted his exhaustion. I was standing backstage, waiting for my introduction, when he intercepted me. He emerged from the shadow of a velvet curtain, holding an absolutely obscene bouquet of 24 long-stemmed white roses, a dramatic, cliched offering. "Cassidy," he murmured, his voice cracking with feigned emotion. He tried to take my hand, but I held my awards program stiffly between us. "Please, I am begging you. This is ridiculous." He launched into a dramatic, tearful apology, loud enough for the stage manager and several influential city figures standing nearby to hear. "You are ruining 6 years of history," he argued, his eyes flashing with desperate calculation. "You are destroying my reputation purely out of spite. I claim I've changed." He was using the language of shared history, attempting to drag me back into the emotional quicksand he knew so well. I maintained absolute professional calm. I looked past the roses and directly into his eyes, which were wet with performative desperation. "You were wrong about the history, Julian," I said, my voice low but firm. "It was not spite, it was strategy." I exposed him. I revealed the truth that Audrey had confessed to me. "You told your family back in the spring that the marriage was functionally over. You planned to discard me when the promotion was secure, claiming I was a burden you needed to trade up from. Your cruelty was not stress. It was a calculated long-term rejection of my worth." I stepped closer, forcing him to hold the massive bouquet like a shield. "So, tell me now, Julian," I asked him, publicly. My voice was pitched perfectly for the surrounding crowd. "Are you apologizing because you miss me, or are you apologizing because your mentor, Mr. Sterling, is watching you fail your compliance review?" His carefully constructed composure shattered. He stared at me, the blood draining from his face. He knew then that I knew everything, including his deepest professional vulnerability. I delivered the final, definitive blow, the one that proved his level was irrelevant. "Julian, you think I am just leaving you with a substantial portion of your assets. That is the smallest part of this. My Nexus Group team just secured the critical city infrastructure contract, the one your highest value clients desperately needed. You are not only losing your money and your partner, you are losing the very contract that could have saved your partnership." He looked at the floor, his entire body slumping under the weight of his ruin. He was financially and professionally checkmated. The city figures and colleagues surrounding us understood the full scope of his humiliation. He lost his composure completely, dropping the obscene bouquet of roses to the floor, where they scattered like the fragments of his career. I walked past Julian Vance, stepping over the trampled white flowers. I ascended the stairs to the stage, my head held high, ready to accept my recognition. I was the embodiment of the status, the stability, and the ethical success he claimed I could never achieve. The applause that greeted me was thunderous. The divorce settlement was finalized rapidly. Julian's attorney, Catherine Walsh, quickly realized that fighting Rhonda Sterling's evidence, Maya's log, the documented financial support, the proof of his planned abandonment would only lead to a public, professional execution. Julian conceded nearly everything. I received the substantial marital asset division, including full financial repayment for every loan and every dollar of support I had provided throughout his crucial career-building years. I walked away not with an allowance, but with a repayment of debt. The professional damage was terminal. Julian's firm terminated his employment shortly after the settlement was signed, citing his lack of professional judgment and inability to maintain necessary stability. The scandal, the visibility of the service, and the subsequent negative press cost him his career trajectory entirely. His new level was unemployment. I did not pause. I immediately used the settlement money, every dollar he had once dismissed as a rounding error, to launch my own venture, a spin-off consulting firm, fully funded and entirely my own, dedicated to highly ethical, profitable urban development. It was a direct, pointed contrast to the parasitic, short-term finance world Julian inhabited. My new firm, Hayes Strategies, immediately secured the major Sterling City contract, the one Julian's clients needed. I used that leverage to hire several high-caliber professionals who respected my integrity and my ruthless focus on the deliverable. We were lean, effective, and ethical. 6 months later, I am thriving. I run my successful company from an office overlooking the river. I am training for a cycling marathon, pushing my body to new limits of physical self-possession. I host small, perfect dinner parties in my private loft. The life is not merely wealthy by Julian's spreadsheet metrics. It is profoundly and luxuriously peaceful. I often reflect on Julian's original insult. He called me an anchor and said I would never be on his level. Now, I see clearly my level was always one of integrity and genuine impact, something that could never be measured on his spreadsheet. His level was superficial, requiring constant external support and validation to prevent its collapse. The ultimate revenge is not his financial ruin. It is the profound, quiet peace I have achieved by systematically removing the anxiety and constant self-doubt he fostered in me. He took my confidence. I took his entire life structure. Then, one rainy afternoon, Rhonda forwarded me a message. It was a final, desperate attempt at contact from Julian, sent through his former lawyer's office. It was a request for a meeting and an offer of a small, custom-made gift, a piece of jewelry, another cheap, symbolic gesture. I deleted the attachment. I paused. Considering the endgame, I instructed Rhonda to send a single, final, firm reply. Ms. Hayes has moved beyond that phase of her life. The status of her future is no longer a conversation you are permitted to enter. I closed the door on the past, understanding that I was not just a survivor of his cruelty, but the creator of a life that is truly, ethically, and profoundly luxurious, a level Julian Vance could never touch. Thank you for listening to my story. Let me know where you are tuning in from and share your thoughts in the comments. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, hit the like button, and press the hype button to help this video reach more listeners.